All right, all right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know we are also on Rumble and X as well. Of course, also YouTube. We have a really good show for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We have quite a bit to discuss. So do me a solid. First and foremost, if you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button for me. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. Tonight's theme is You Won't Believe It. You won't believe it, but I don't know nowadays. Maybe you will. Maybe. We have quite a bit to get into. I'm going to go ahead and give a couple of shout outs here before Max joins the show. Shout out to Rich, says Epstein, who? Donnie is creating major global political upheaval throughout the world. Masterclass in distraction. Yeah, we're going to get into some of that tonight when Max comes on, because it's very obvious what they're trying to do. Greetings, FAFO. Let me guess. Hunter Biden got off coke for a few minutes to become a Republican for the cameras? Not quite, but oh my God. We're going to get into it. There's so much to talk about there. Greetings, Rev says, if Christ does return, you will know he is authentic because he will bring Roy Cohen, Thule Kupferberg, Gigi Allen, Madeline Murray, O'Hare, Ayn Rand, Allen Ginsberg, and Kinky Friedman with him. Shout out to Blockbuster, says, hi. Greetings, I know myself. Michelle Obama and her no affirmative action wealth creation, i.e. no reparation rhetoric, should go sit down somewhere and leave us alone. Shout out to CBC Voter, says, happy Thursday, Sabby and Eric. Greetings, Mumu, says Sabby. I recommend checking out Canadian politics because our liberal PM, liberals equal Dems, is using the threat of Trump to dismantle everything and push a conservative agenda. Dems will do the same too. Interesting. I have to check out what's going on in Canada. Thank you for the super chat. Justice by karma. America never changed from the evils upon which it was built and founded. It has only succeeded in getting rich off of deceiving the world about it. Ooh, interesting. Good one. Good one. Greetings, Salma, says, expose the lies of Netanyahu, Judaism, and Jewish Torah has lots of Islamic Arabic words. Ayatollah, Muhammad, Quran, Masjid are Islamic, Jewish, and Christian words. That is very interesting. Greetings, Hondo, says Max and Sabby. Shout out to Quinn, says, in a completely unacceptable act of racism from a middle school teacher in Florida, Karen Whitmere Savage was filmed hanging a black baby doll from a cord around its neck. Someone sent me an email about that. I haven't had a chance to look into that story yet, but hopefully I'll be able to cover it over the weekend, because I know we're going into Memorial Day weekend, and I won't be live this Sunday, but we will have videos throughout the weekend because I'll be with the fam. I'll be with the fam. Greetings, New York Varsity says, look at that thumbnail. I'm having Usual Suspects flashbacks. And greetings, Lorez. Hi, Sabby, Eric, Corey, and RBN fam. Always great to see Max. Zohran really is doing some good things. Is that why you're covering him? Haha. If so, hope he lasts, but I just know Dims will pull plug on him. Yeah, we'll have to see. Greetings, Hannah says, Max with a smile. And greetings, Trelly says, hello, Sabby, you are awesome. Don't let no one else tell you otherwise. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gents, let's go ahead and dive in. There's one story I want to cover before Max gets here. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Yeah, shout out to the patrons in the house. Patrons in the house. All right. Thank you to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories here. We have the ultimate. Don't forget about the Sabinators. There's Sabsters as well. I think they're pretty cool. Don't forget about those Sabbies because they're not too shabby. And of course, ladies and gents, last but not least, I do want to thank the members. The members. All of their names are listed here, ladies and gentlemen, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. I also want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. We call them newbies. Let's give it up for Shira Ben Shashar. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And Tammy Rafale. Welcome to both of you. And thank you, ladies and gents. Hey, hey, hey. All right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into that thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen. Again, tonight's theme is you won't believe it. You won't believe it. So what are we discussing tonight? Let's put it up on the screen. Tonight, we are discussing, of course, Max Blumenthal is going to be joining the show. Should be here around 8:30-ish. We have so much to talk about the Middle East. We also have to talk about, it seems like Donald Trump is about to invade Cuba. We're going to get into that as well. And so much more to talk about here. Also, this recent, I don't know if you guys know about this, but this recent CEO of the Daily Wire just resigned. So I want to get Max's perspective about that too, because he's been in this media space for quite some time. I'm also going to discuss Michelle Obama. So Michelle Obama just had an interview recently, and she is walking back some of the statements that she said before. In particular, she had something to say about Obama's presidency. And I was actually surprised that she said this and how we ended up, in the era of Trump. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Zohran Mandami is making more gains in New York City. We're going to get into his more recent announcement, and I'm going to explain to you how local politics seems to be one of the more easier ways to make change, to implement change, right? So we got some examples to show you there. Last but not least, oh boy, Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden just had an interview with Candace Owens. I just saw the interview. I watched the entire interview, and I have some things to say about Hunter. Hunter Biden was not truthful throughout that interview. And there's a couple of things that I want to touch on, including some things that I noticed that he did not mention at all. I could tell even in the chat, people were saying, why isn't he talking about this? Why isn't he saying this? We're going to get into it. A couple of points that I want to hit on there, ladies and gents. But yeah, we're going to get into it tonight. Again, the theme is you won't believe it. You won't believe it. So let's go ahead and try to make you believe it. Let's dive in. Let's get into this first story here, ladies and gents. New York City is undergoing change. I told you guys before a couple of weeks ago that I was wrong. I was incorrect when I said that I didn't think that Zohran was going to be able to accomplish these policies, but it appears that he is doing that. There is a new announcement that just came from him. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, they announced that they were opening that community grocery store in East Harlem. And now there's another announcement. He said that he wanted to have a network of community grocery stores. So another one is coming. This one is coming in the Bronx. And from what I understand, this will be the first one that opens. So let's go ahead and get into it.
In other news that we're following, we now know the location of New York's second city-run grocery store.
Today, Mayor Mamdani announced the 20,000 square foot store will open at the Peninsula, an affordable housing complex in the Hunts Point section of the Bronx.
Now, the store is expected to open next year, and it's part of the mayor's plan to open affordable city-run stores in each borough. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Joe Torres.
What if the meat products coming off this truck in Hunts Point were bound for not the local supermarket, but a city-run grocery store?
If the food is at low cost, it's going to be better on our pockets and our budgets.
And that's the idea, according to Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Today, he unveiled the plans for a 20,000 square foot food store at the Peninsula, a redevelopment project on the site of a former juvenile detention facility. City leaders expect the public grocery store to open in 2027.
We are going to use the power of government to lower prices and make it easier for New Yorkers to put food on the table.
City leaders asked New Yorkers what they would like to see inside a city-run grocery store, and the answers are rather crystal clear. Cheaper eggs, fresh produce, low prices, and a healthy variety.
The good price is the hard part. It's not hard finding it, but the price is the part, especially.
Did you guys notice they mentioned eggs? That's one of the biggest complaints that I hear people, vent about, the price of eggs.
When, you got to go into the city, there's prices, you're paying for everything you do here.
Just last month, the mayor announced La Marqueta in East Harlem as the first site selected for the municipal grocery store program, which calls for a city-run food store in each borough. A city-run grocery store on city-owned property lowers prices for shoppers by reducing the overhead costs normally passed on to consumers.
It would be definitely helpful money-wise, because the money it's getting expensive every day for buying this food and necessary things.
The benefits of a city-run grocery store in Hunts Point should bring considerable economic relief for people who truly need the help. The mayor estimates 77% of households in this part of the South Bronx struggle to afford basic necessities. In Hunts Point, I'm Joe Torres.
Yeah, it's true. I'll go ahead and tell you guys, I lived in New York City many, many years ago. Even a bottle of water is not cheap in New York City. Everything in New York is expensive. And they're telling the truth here. They're correct. Like when they talk about the prices are cheaper at the city-run grocery stores, that is true. You can look at the one in Atlanta as an example as well. So hopefully this will be something that can relieve some of that financial strain for New Yorkers. And here's the thing. Let's say you don't live in the Bronx. Let's say you live in a different borough in New York. Say you live in Brooklyn or whatever. Well, that doesn't mean you can't go to that grocery store. So I think that'll help people price wise. And that is something that is definitely needed in New York City. Like I said, it's incredibly expensive to live there. So Zohran is moving very quickly. And, many of us are looking at our mayors. Like we're looking to see why didn't you guys move that quickly? Like, why aren't you trying to get these things done at a faster pace? And I think that there is some domino effect that's happening here, because I just found out in Massachusetts that since he announced that first community grocery store in East Harlem, I just found out that now Boston is trying to see if they can do the same thing. So you see, it's like, there is a domino effect here that I think could be beneficial if you're looking at what he's doing here. So I want to bring you to his announcement, and I'm going to explain to you how, some of the things that we've been fighting for, we've been demanding and asking for are possible via locally. And I'm wondering, even when you look at something like Obamacare, right, which when it started out, it was wonky and it didn't go as far as they thought it was going to go and all that type of stuff. But Obamacare came from Massachusetts. It was originally called Romney Care. That's right. It was actually implemented by a Republican. Until this day, some people still don't know that. So Romney Care was implemented here in Massachusetts. And then when Barack Obama became president, he took that idea of Romney Care and said, okay, well, we're going to do Obamacare. So it was like a federal, expansion of Romney Care. In fact, it is not uncommon for the federal government to implement policies that have already been tested and tried through in the states first. So I think a lot of times this is where the fight is going to be, in the states locally. Now, I look at all these states across the country that have legalized or decriminalized, cannabis. The reason why the federal government hasn't done that is because, they have they get money from police unions. They're tied in with them. And they know that if they were to legalize marijuana federally, that is going to decrease arrests for the police department. That will impact quota. Thus, that will also have an effect on the for-profit prisons. So that's what a lot of it comes down to. So I think that, okay, one second, guys. Okay. So I think that a lot of this that goes into effect, I think it starts locally. So let's listen to what he said here when he announced it.
Workers in this same neighborhood and across the Bronx cannot say the same. 77% of households in surrounding neighborhoods cannot afford basic needs. More than 50% of households have relied on public assistance in the last 12 months alone. And when nearby families go shopping for groceries, there are not enough affordable options nearby. With only one full-service supermarket within a quarter mile, thousands of New Yorkers have only limited options.
This is the part I want to touch on really quickly. You guys, if you've never lived in the inner city, one of the things that is really lacking is grocery stores. And I noticed it when I lived in New York. Boston has a similar issue. It's not like how it is when you're out in the suburbs or you're in a more rural area where you have 4 or 3 grocery stores, within your vicinity. It's not like that. When you live in New York City, when you live in Boston, you have grocery stores, but they're far and few. Like when I lived in Somerville, for example, we had the Market Basket, which is a smaller Market Basket, but it's one of the cheapest grocery stores that we have here. And that place is crazy. It's always packed, because it's the cheapest one. So everybody goes there. And then down the street from that, you also had a Star Market, which is more expensive, right? So it's just something I've noticed. And when you live in the city and you're in a neighborhood that is lower income, it's far and few, right? So you're less likely to have more options. And a lot of New Yorkers don't have a car. So they really rely on being able to get on that subway to get to places. So places need to be relatively closer if you're going to buy groceries.
We are here together today to change that and to chart a new course. Last month, we announced that we would fulfill a campaign promise, that we would lower prices by creating a network of city-owned grocery stores, one in each borough. In these stores, prices will be cheaper. Workers will be paid fairly and treated with dignity. Going to the grocery store will no longer cause that same anxiety for so many New Yorkers. Now, on April 13th, we announced the first site, La Marqueta en el Barrio. And in doing so, honoring the legacy of Fiorella LaGuardia, who opened a site close to 100 years prior with the same mission of delivering cheaper goods to New Yorkers. Today, my friends, I am so proud to announce that the Bronx location will be here at the Peninsula.
So that's going to be big for the Bronx. And if you've never been to the Bronx is the poorest borough in New York City. Richie Torres district in the Bronx is the poorest in the country. So you can see it. It's really weird. You'll go to the Bronx and Yankee Stadium, this is the new Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium is all new and spiffy, and it's beautiful and it's huge. Yankee Stadium is huge. You compare it to Fenway. Fenway is so small, so tiny when you compare it to Yankee Stadium. But it's in the hood. You go to Yankee Stadium, it's all pretty and new, and you can tell they put a lot of money into that. But when you look around Yankee Stadium, you'll see No, you're in the Bronx. You're in the heart of the Bronx, and you can see poverty around it, right? So it shows you what they invest in and what they don't invest in.
And New Yorkers will not need to wait long for costs to drop. This store will be the first of the 5 city-run grocery stores to open. Bronx residents will be able to begin shopping here next year. It is going to be a 20,000 square foot location, and its ambition is perfectly placed at the peninsula, which will house 740 units of 100% affordable housing by the time that it's fully built. And as we heard from Jeannie, it'll be located on the site of the former Spofford Juvenile Detention Facility, somewhere that for so many years was synonymous with neglect and mistreatment. This was a place of failure, where young, predominantly low-income New Yorkers were subjected to brutal physical conditions, human rights violations, and physical abuse. We are reclaiming that same site to tell a very different story. This store and the peninsula as a whole will serve as physical proof of our conviction that government can be a force for good, that government can drive change that improves people's lives. And standing here this morning, I cannot help but think of the words of our 40th president, Ronald Reagan. He famously said, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help.'" It's a good quote, but I disagree. I think 9 more terrifying words are actually, "I worked all day and can't feed my family."
There it is. That's an important part. When I lived in New York, everybody I knew had a side hustle. Everybody. People who had full-time professional jobs still had another job on the side because that's how expensive it is. It's like, I swear to God, like Boston is expensive, but New York is like, again, it's just like a bottle of water is not cheap in New York City, right? So, and it's not just a New York thing. A lot of us have been talking about the economy, recently, and we're talking about how we can't really, it's like you can't make ends meet. Like people are living paycheck to paycheck, and it's, spilling over. It's not just in New York, and people are trying to figure out, okay, how do we stretch a dollar further? How do we do this? How do we do that? The gas prices are higher. The food prices are higher. I was just at the grocery store earlier today. The food prices are higher. And so it's like, if your pay is not increasing to adjust for inflation, everybody's trying to stretch. Everyone's trying to find ways to stretch their money. And God forbid you have unexpected expense. And then what are you supposed to do? Now, he is moving quickly. This grocery store is supposed to open just next year. And so my question is, and maybe you guys can let me know, my question is, what are all the other mayors doing? Why aren't all the other mayors moving as quickly as Zohran is moving? Why aren't they trying to do these things? Now, there are some questions about who is going to pay for this. I saw the one from you, Klee. Will Zohran do that without raising taxes? From what I understand, this was an agreement that he worked out with Governor Hochul. I believe there was some funding that he got from her to be able to do this. That's what I understand. So he found a way to make it happen. And at first, I did not think that he was going to be able to implement these policies because I was like, she's not going to approve it. She's going to be like, no. But I guess she wanted to get reelected. So she decided to approve it. Yes, the food bank loans are like, yeah. People, it's real out here. And everybody's like just trying to, except for rich people, everybody else just trying to find a way to get by, to make a dollar stretch here and there. And we're looking at some of the things that he's doing now. I don't agree with Zohran on everything. There's some things that I be kind of looking at him kind of side eye with, but I think when it comes to meeting those domestic needs, it seems like he's doing that. He's doing what he said he was going to do. And I think that's an example to look to. Now, when we talk about like local issues, I just want to show you guys how things can go locally. We were talking about just recently with the whole Thomas Massie situation, right? We were talking about we need to get big money out of electoral politics. Check out what some of the states are doing. Again, locally. California. If you live in California, this may be coming your way this November. This is one of the proposed ballot measures. California allow public financing of election campaign measure. So they haven't been confirmed yet. They'll be confirmed, I think, later this summer. But this is one of the ones that California is trying to put on the ballot. See, guys, this is why I tell you not to stay home. This is why I tell you you still need to go and vote, because there are things that are being passed in your state. And if you don't show up to vote, you don't get a chance to vote on this. If California passes this, this is going to be freaking huge, because California is a large state and it can set a precedent for other states on the West Coast. And you know how it usually goes. Things usually, a lot of times, they start on the West Coast and they make their way further east. So this is a big one. California allow public financing of election campaigns measure is on the ballot in California, November 3rd. So everybody, if you're in California, I don't want to hear you tell me you're not going to vote. You're just going to stay home. This is something you could be missing out on. That's one example. Hawaii, similar. Hawaii governor signs the first of its kind legislation to circumvent Citizens United. Now, there may be some legal challenges expected here, but as you can see, when we complained about the money in politics, look at where the change is taking place. It's taking place in the states. And that's why a lot of times I think that we have a tendency to focus on what's happening on, the federal level, nationally in the US, and we're missing everything that's happening in the states. There are people who live in California that I bet you don't know this is about this. So you got to get to know who your city councilors are. You should know who your city councilor is. You need to know who your mayor is. You need to know who your governor. And if you live in a ballot initiative state, and there's 24 of them, I believe, if you live in a ballot initiative state, you definitely should be looking at this right now, because they're already listed. So that's a big one. And then you look at some of the things that Zohran is doing, and that brings us again to 11 demands. The first one, right? So fix big money in politics and government. That is the first demand that Eric has for 11 demands. Eric is my producer for those who are new. And I think a lot of times we have been trying to find ways to push these things on the national level and say, well, we need Congress to do this and we need the president to do that. But some of these things you can get started in your state. I want to show you another example. Justin Amash, he brought up a really good point. Justin Amash used to be in Congress. He was an independent. I think he caucused with the Republicans or something. He was kind of independent libertarian, something like that. And then he left Congress. Justin Amash said, Michigan election laws make it practically prohibitive for independents or candidates from outside the two major parties to run and succeed. If Michiganders want more competition and better choices, we must reform the laws, starting with the elimination of straight ticket voting. Okay, Justin, this is a good example. Michigan is also a ballot initiative state. So instead of us saying, Congress, can you do this? Congress, can you do that? My representatives aren't listening to me. The president isn't doing anything. Why not run a ballot measure in Michigan to make this happen? You have to amend the laws. You have to change the laws. Now, a lot of times people look at us, for example, here in Massachusetts, and they're like, well, how did Massachusetts legalize cannabis and get all those cannabis stores, so early on? Because that was years ago. We voted for it. It was a ballot measure. Somebody ran it as a ballot measure, and they got enough signatures that it was able to get on the ballot, and we voted for it. That's how we were able to do it. That's called direct democracy. Congress is representative democracy. That's having someone that is a politician represent your district, or supposed to represent you, but they actually represent their donors. You're basically putting your hopes in their hands, and you're hoping that they do the right thing. But some of these things can be done via direct democracy. Or if you have a mayor like Zohran, who seems to be willing to sit down and talk with the people. I just found out yesterday, Zohran's going to be doing like a Twitch stream show where he's going to be taking questions from people in the city. Who else is doing that? A lot of other mayors, they run, they hide, you see them in public, they don't want to talk to you, but when it's time to vote, they're knocking on your door. So there's something to be looked at there. Whether you agree with Zohran's policies or not, I think that's beside the point. He's obviously doing something that's actually working. So we can say, well, he didn't do this and he didn't go far enough with that. But I've never seen a mayor move that quickly to try to do what they said that they were going to do. So he is moving in that direction. The grocery stores, that's getting up and going, which is one of the things that he promised. It's something to look at. Something to look at. So I say you won't believe it because I can't believe how fast he's moving. I'm so used to hearing people say the politicians, they've only been there for a year. Well, they've only been there it's only their second year. They're only in their third year. How many times have you heard that, right? So he's showing you just how fast that you can move. Just how fast you can move. Let's go to some of the comments here. Eric, can we go to the next part? Max is about to join. Oh, I got it. Okay. I do have it there. All right. All right. Thank you for the super chat, Marvin. Sabby, how training going? You going for lean or muscular? Lean. It's going well. I was just at the gym today. Keith said, Sabby, what's your take on the new smart locks coming with monthly subscriptions? Imagine not being able to gain access to your house because the subscription is not renewed / paid. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. Just use a key. I'm not into all this smart stuff, like smart house, smart lock, smart this. I don't know about all that. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Technology doesn't always work. That's the other problem that you tend to run into. So we know how it can be. All right. I think Max is here. So Max, I'm ready whenever you are. All right. All right. Coming back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, is Max Blumenthal. He is the founder of The Gray Zone. Let's go ahead and bring him back in. Welcome back, Max.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Doing good. There's a lot happening geopolitically. I want to start with the Middle East. I want to show you what Donald Trump just said today. You guys are going to get a kick out of this one. He's talking about Israel and Netanyahu.
What did you say to Prime Minister Netanyahu about Iran and how long to hold off on strike?
He's fine. He'll do whatever I want him to do. He's very, very good man. He'll do whatever I want him to do, and he's a great guy. To me, he's a great guy. Don't forget, he was a wartime prime minister, and he's not treated right in Israel, in my opinion. I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister, so maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel, run for prime minister. I had a poll this morning. I'm 99%, so that's good. But no, he's a wartime prime minister, and I just don't think they treat him well.
Mr. President, what do you do?
I think they have a president over there that treats him very poorly.
You're on the same page with him on Iran?
Yeah.
Mr. President.
So, Max, Donald Trump says that he thinks after this he'll go and be prime minister of Israel. I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, the other thing he said that other people that I haven't seen people pick up on is that he slammed the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, who's mostly there in the presidency is a ceremonial position in Israel, but Herzog refuses to pardon. He has the ability to call for a pardon of Netanyahu for all of his corruption prosecutions, and Trump is calling for Netanyahu to basically be pardoned and exonerated for all of these indictments he faces after he leaves office. And this is part of the Israeli influence on Netanyahu, on Donald Trump, that he's actually lobbying for Netanyahu and interfering in the Israeli system of justice. I mean, it got to the point where Lindsey Graham, Trump's top ally in the Senate, top warmonger in the Senate, actually went and sat in the witness booth for Netanyahu during one of the hearings that he faced in order to send a signal that Washington is on his side and that you'll be in trouble if you prosecute him. So Trump is like, he's siding with a faction inside Israel, a power mafia inside Israel. And we've seen presidents do that more quietly. Bill Clinton sided against Netanyahu, but this is highly significant because he's once again interfered in Israeli politics on behalf of the billionaires who control him, who are Likudnik billionaires. And so he said he would win 99% of the vote in Israel. That's also kind of ironic or telling, because Trump is historically unpopular in the US. His war in Iran is historically unpopular. He is at a much lower approval rating than most second-term incumbent presidents are at this stage in their presidency. So he's boasting about his popularity in Israel. Well, I can think of another president who said that they were more popular in Israel than the US at the end of their term, and it was George W. Bush. His final address as president, where he was received with warm applause, was in the Knesset in Jerusalem. I think he was the first US president to address the Knesset. And they were thanking him for all the wars that he waged on their behalf and the free hand that he gave Ariel Sharon and his successor, Ehud Olmert, to destroy the last iterations of Palestinian resistance to occupation in the West Bank and build the apartheid wall. There's a memorial, there's a monument for George W. Bush, a small monument in Jerusalem. And I'm sure there will be a lot more for Donald Trump, who's basically given Israel the store and done everything they could have wanted and more.
I didn't know there was a monument of George W. Bush in Israel. That's wild.
It is. I didn't either until I went there and came across it and vomited in my mouth.
Oh my gosh. And then, this whole situation with Iran. This was announced recently, and I was like, wait a minute, what is going on here? So this is the regime change factor, guys, which they said, they're not really interested in doing, but they are. This is from the New York Times. It says early war goal was to install a hardline former president as Iran's leader. This guy right here, are you familiar with this gentleman, Max?
Yeah, that's everyone's familiar with Ahmadinejad. He's one of the most well-known Iranians in the world.
So this is someone I would think that would work on behalf of the West, you think?
Well, Israel demonized him as the world's worst Holocaust denier when he was president. And he did host a conference dedicated to questioning the established version of the Holocaust, which featured the former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke, along with other figures, and kind of a PR disaster for Iran. The neocons in Washington loved this, even as they condemned it, because it made it harder to make a nuclear deal with Iran. And Israel was playing up the worst Holocaust denier ever. Now, Israeli sources are feeding this story to their main kind of source or channel at the New York Times, Ronan Bergman, who's a veteran Israeli intelligence reporter, that they actually saw Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as the Iranian Delcy Rodriguez. And I find it highly questionable, even though Israel has a long history of supporting anti-Jewish elements around the world. It's hard to imagine, because this is how the story goes, according to the New York Times. That I knew that Ahmadinejad's home had been struck. It was sort of considered a form of house arrest. He was mostly confined to his home, but he was said in Tehran to be accessible, and he would talk to people on his street. He wasn't exactly a prisoner, but the story is that he was being held there as a de facto hostage of the quote unquote regime, and that Israel struck with, I think, drone strikes his home in order to kill his IRGC guards and allow him to just kind of like run out in the street and be free. And then he would somehow become the next leader. They wound up wounding him. They wound up killing a few of his guards. He was taken to the hospital and barely survived. And, honestly, to me, it looked like a botched attempt to kill him for, all the naughty things he said about the Jewish state. And now they're spinning it to make it seem as though they had a plan in the beginning. But it sounds like one of the most harebrained, insane plans I've ever heard. It doesn't make sense. I think this also might have been a plan they sold Donald Trump to make him think there was a Delcy Rodriguez, just to get the U.S. in this war, because Israel has Trump right where they want him. Trump doesn't have Trump right where he wants himself. The global economy has been destroyed. He's an idiot. He's been revealed as one of the most shallow dupes for his Israeli masters. I mean, it's unbelievable. He did not actually think Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz. He did not think they'd be able to retaliate. He's being told that Iran's navy is destroyed, even as the Pentagon chairman, Joint Chief Chairman Dan Kane testifies that there are too many small boats for the U.S. to be able to open up the Strait of Hormuz. And essentially, they've been defeated at this point and have achieved no military objectives. Trump fired all the experts who warned him about this at the urging of Laura Loomer. And now so perhaps this was the plan he was sold on, but I find it to be bizarre. The only interesting details in this story that I thought might have backed it up were that Ahmadinejad traveled to Hungary and Guatemala. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, those are countries whose governments are very close to Israel, where, he could have spoken to Mossad operatives.
Well, Trump was supposed to strike Iran on Tuesday. Tuesday came and he said, we're actually not going to do that. It's probably going to be in a couple of days, Monday or Tuesday, or, he's just extending it. And the reality is, do you think Trump is just playing dumb and trying to fool the public? Or do you think he really does believe that he could just beat Iran?
I think Trump may have convinced himself that he can do serious damage to Iran's infrastructure and force a deal, because right now Iran is not willing to do a deal. And the U.S. terms are the Israelis' terms. The Israeli terms are designed to violate all of Iran's red lines. A red line would be Iran has to surrender its enriched uranium and hand it over to the United States, which, by the way, Venezuela did today. I don't even know how much they had. They basically have to surrender their deterrence and their national rights. And they're not going to do it, especially after the last round of conflict where Iran demonstrated that it could deter the U.S. and do serious damage in an asymmetrical fashion. So Trump may have convinced himself that he can do this, and he may go back to war at 4:05 p.m. on Friday when the markets close for an extended period, because there is a stock blackout for Memorial Day. That's when Trump likes to go to war. And he might do so under cover of negotiations, as he did in the past. They just, kind of manipulated the markets today by feeding stories about Pakistani brokered possible deal that was minutes away between the U.S. and Iran, and it sent the price of Brent crude down $10 a barrel. But it's not going to achieve any military objectives. They will kill lots of people. They will harm Iran's economy. People will suffer, but it will not achieve any goal. It will not open the Strait of Hormuz. And I think the military planners around Trump, the more serious people who deal with issues like procurement, understand this, which is why they leaked to the Washington Post today a report that the U.S. spent more of its own munition stockpile defending Israel than Israel did. And that Israel was actually holding on to its cartridges of Arrow 2 and 3 interceptors, while the U.S. was spending its own THAAD stockpile, which it had repurposed from its stocks that it was going to use to defend, for example, Taiwan and Ukraine. So this is a massive admission that Israel is a strategic liability to U.S. national security and to U.S. empire. Ukraine and Taiwan are much more valuable imperial pieces to the U.S. than Israel, because they are there to contain, weaken, and counter the two major rivals to American unipolar control, Russia and China. Israel, what value does it have? It just terrorizes its small neighbors. And as one military planner, who I think was someone pretty high up in the Pentagon, said to the Washington Post, Israel could never fight and win a war on its own. They've just never been put in that position because we always back them up. So this next round of war, if Trump does it, will be a disaster for U.S. empire. And at the same time, Trump is too stupid to know that.
But does he not understand that, like, you know, Iran, from what I understand, they have gone deeper and deeper underground with their weapons. So you can't defeat them by air, and that would mean you would have to bring in ground troops, and that would be a disaster.
Yes, that's a great point. I mean, Iran's missile cities worked. They kept hitting this one missile city near Isfahan and another near Yazd, and they kept digging it out, and they're all dug out now. They gave it everything they had. So then what could the U.S. do? They could maybe take 2 islands, one of them being Karg Island, and then what? You're just there, and then all of a sudden, FPV drones start buzzing in on you, and you have no ability to intercept them or jam them. You're just like the Israelis in southern Lebanon. Shahid drones, mobile artillery. Maybe you're fighting some much more determined, motivated IRGC forces. Iran actually carried out successful sorties with its own air force against U.S. bases in the Gulf. So there are all kinds of ways that U.S. troops could just be ground down after taking these islands. The other one would be like Chabahar, which is more of a amphibious invasion against some coastal territory that's sort of flat, like with straight beaches. But 13 soldiers have died. Hundreds more have been wounded in various ways. And the Iranians have this mantra of come closer, because more U.S. troops will certainly die, be captured. They will not be featured in Michael Bay films. And that will be a political catastrophe for Donald Trump at an already low point in his presidency. And this all raises the question, is this why he's doing Cuba now? Because he wants a few days of headlines and to go back to the Don Road doctrine, facing a much militarily weaker target, and repeat the Venezuela scenario. Is that why he's doing it? Whether or not that's why he's doing it, there's a conclusion to be drawn that speaks volumes about the modern GOP under Donald Trump, which ran kind of as more nakedly as a white people's party under Trump than under any other Republican candidate. They might have had like diverse conventions, but the main rallying cry of Trump was, America first and mass deportations. And they're the most decisive moves that they are making on the world stage, which makes them therefore the most decisive moves, period, are being done because he's catering to very small ethnic interest groups in the United States. A small fraction of extremely wealthy, racist Jewish Americans who support the GOP. Remember, most Jews are Democrats, don't support Trump. But the ones who are Republicans tend to be extremely wealthy, extremely racist, and more religious than Jewish Democrats. And he's catering to what I call the Gusano industrial complex of Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans who are in Miami and are just here to use the United States as a base for destroying the governments of their former countries. That's why he's doing Cuba. And this will be, it will be catastrophic in a way that I don't think that Venezuela was not. Venezuela has remained stable because of the very conciliatory nature of its government, which saw an option of basically staying in power selling out a whole lot to the United States, or allowing some right-wing fanatic like Maria Corina Machado to come in and start a kind of civil war and purge their base and purge the cooperatives that they'd established, and which would lead to a bloodbath, following the bloodbath of confronting the U.S. military. So they went for the kind of humiliation ritual that we're seeing in Caracas now. I don't think Cuba is going to go for that. So it's kind of an unprecedented scenario.
Speaking of Cuba, I just want to show people, if they haven't had a chance to see what's happening right now, Trump just announced that the CIA is in Cuba. You guys need to hear this.
Well, we have a lot of people there. We have the CIA there. We have Marco is there. Marco's parents, as you know, were from Cuba. So we have a lot of expertise in Cuba, and it's not going to be like the biggest thing we've ever done, but I will tell you, to a lot of people, it's going to be one of the most important. They've been looking for this moment for 65 years. So we'll see what happens. But we're going to, in the meantime, we're going to have to help them out. They have no way of living. They have no food. They have no electricity. They have no energy at all. But they do have great people. There are a lot of great people. I mean, I have so many Cuban friends in Miami, mostly in Miami and Florida. And they're unbelievable people. They're unbelievable entrepreneurs, and they'd like to go back. I think hopefully they're going to want to live here, but they want to go back. Maybe they'll invest. We'll see what happens. But we're freeing up Cuba. Well, we have a lot.
So this is what I was talking about. First of all, and Max, correct me on this if I'm incorrect. Everybody keeps saying Marco Rubio's parents are from Cuba. From what I read, they were actually from Spain, and then they went to Cuba. And that is, from what I understood, they were actually from Spain. So
I didn't know that. What I know is that he, like Ted Cruz, falsely claimed that his parents fled from the evil Castro regime, when in fact they left Cuba under Batista, the US-backed dictator. Ted Cruz told the same lie. I don't know if they were born in Spain, but, he's definitely a, typical Cuban American from Miami who wants to see regime change. And he's very passionate about it. I was watching his press conference today. He was asked about Iran and he kind of shrugged off the question. Then he shrugs off Ebola and he says, well, Ebola's over in Africa, but Cuba's 90 miles away. And he's so passionate about it. This is his passion project. And he's determined to bring regime change. They would prefer to do it without directly sending in the military. The Cuban military has prepared for some 60 years or so for this scenario. It doesn't, and it would be unclear to me whether they just be able to waltz in as they did in Caracas and pick up Raul Castro or various Cuban revolutionary leaders as though they were waiting for an Uber, as though some hidden deal had been struck. So what they're doing is as Trump said, they're starving the Cuban people. This is a crime tantamount to genocide. They're depriving them of energy. We sent a reporter across Cuba Danny Shaw, who's an academic who speaks Spanish. He speaks the dialect. He lived as the Cuban people did, went all the way to Santiago, by car, by horse and buggy. I actually did the same thing when I was much younger, back during the end of the special period in 2000. But he did this year, and what he found were depopulated villages, children who were simply not getting food at school anymore. The government stores were completely empty. To get antibiotics, people had to go to the black market, which was really one of the main places of life where things are sold in the private economy, which exists parallel to the state economy. And these privatized stores, which were allowed as part of the normalization under Obama, if you have dollars, you can go in there and order an ice cream or like a lobster dish, and you can live pretty well. and that privatized part of the economy is connected to Miami. So they've found a wedge in the Cuban Revolution through these through the privatization that's already allowed. And what Rubio wants to do is distribute $100 million in U.S. taxpayer money through those private businesses and through what he calls charities, which are NGOs that are connected to the State Department, and overwhelm what's left of the Cuban state and essentially devour it. That would lead to regime change. And then they demand a multi-party system in which anyone who participated in the revolution is banned. So fundamentally undemocratic. The multi-party system would be a procedural, neoliberal bourgeois democracy like you see in like Panama or any of the countries where the US has total control. And then that's a wrap. And so the Cuban leadership is not going to do that. They're not giving them the opportunity for a deal. And it really all goes to the ideological zealotry of the Miami Mafia that produced Marco Rubio.
So this is Raul Castro, because this was announced as well, that the DOJ is expected to indict Raul Castro. I want you guys to hear what they're saying the indictment is for.
There, I do want to get to this breaking news. Sources are telling Fox News the Justice Department is expected to announce an indictment against Cuba's former leader, Raul Castro. We're told he could face murder charges nearly 30 years after he allegedly directed Cuban fighter jets to shoot down 2 civilian planes over international waters. That attack killed 4 men and included 3 U.S. citizens. That announcement is scheduled for 1 p.m. Eastern.
How do we know that actually happened, though?
Well, it did happen, and I appreciate her saying it was over Cuban territorial waters.
Oh my God.
You remember the Chinese balloons in the United States, the freak out over that? And they sent F-22s to shoot down balloons that they said were from China. It turned out they were hobby balloons, right?
Or weather balloons, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was just mass panic. And that's what the United States did. If there were foreign flights again and again by Cuban pilots dropping leaflets over U.S. cities, urging Americans to rebel and violently rise up against their government, what do you think the U.S. would do? I mean, it would be, they wouldn't let him, they would not let that happen once.
It wouldn't.
They would not allow that. No country would allow that. Cuba didn't allow that, but they gave this group, Brothers to the Rescue, which was a fake humanitarian group operating out of Miami under the rubric of a network of CIA-backed, what they called themselves militant organizations. They were terrorist organizations, hell-bent on regime change. Brothers to the Rescue flew over Cuba something like 24 times. Throughout 1995, the Cuban government was protesting with the Clinton administration, telling them, stop these flights. They're violating our airspace. We cannot tolerate this. They're dropping pamphlets telling people to violently rise up. We are a sovereign nation. The Clinton administration reacted, I think, mostly rationally. And by January 1996, you had the key White House point man on Cuba, Richard Nucio, and the Transportation Secretary, Federico Pena, beseeching the FAA, Federal Aviation Authority, not to allow these flights. For whatever reason, in February 1996, the FAA allowed the Brothers to the Rescue flights, a series of flights over Cuba, and they were finally shot down. I said they were a part of a network of CIA-backed terrorist organizations. Brothers to the Rescue was part of a network of groups that had overseen bombings inside Cuba, including the bombing of a Cuban civilian airliner, Cubana 455, which was flying from Barbados to Jamaica. 73 people, including the Cuban fencing team, like world-class Olympic fencing team, were killed. The bombs were placed by Luis Posada Carriles and Orlando Bosch. Posada Carriles was a CIA asset who was managed, cultivated, recruited, directed by the CIA. He had his own personal CIA handler. These documents are all online. Anyone can see the CIA documents. And Luis Posada Carriles was freed from prison. He was able to apply for U.S. citizenship in 2006. I don't know if he got it. And he died an old man in his bed in Miami, along with Orlando Bosch. And Miami in 1983 actually inaugurated Orlando Bosch Day to honor him for his great contributions, including carrying out terrorist attacks. I mean, this was one of many terrorist attacks. So this is what Cuba has been up against, and we can now see what they're up against. They're not even hiding it. There's an aircraft carrier parked off Cuban shores. And
it's crazy.
At any moment, Cuba could be invaded, carpet bombed, invaded by special forces. It's a very dark time.
It's really wild. I will say, we were talking about like international waters. For those who may not have seen this, there was another flotilla that was intercepted, or they were kidnapped basically by Israel. And I don't know if you guys saw this. I think some of them are Italian, but they were doing like this humiliation like ritual. And this is Ben Gvir. He's asshole, just terrible person. And people needed to see this. I don't believe any of these were Americans. I know some of them were from Italy, but everyone check this out.
אלה כל הנוח'בות, אלה הגיבורים, על הילדים, על הנשים, על התינוקות שלנו. תראו איך הם היום. מינימום של מינימום תנאים, אבל יש עוד משהו שחייבים לעשות. עונש מוות למחבלים.
So this is like one of the humiliation rituals that they do. Like if they capture you, there's other things that they did. I can't show it on here, but they were beaten. Some of those prisoners did show like their bruises and everything. But it's just nobody stops Israel from doing this. I mean, like for those who don't understand, like those are international waters. You can't just, that's essentially piracy. When you board someone's boat and you kidnap them and imprison them. And
well, we should, and you know, we should first of all honor the courage of those humanitarians on the flotillas. They're the real brothers and sisters to the rescue, and they're not backed by the CIA they're backed by the people to break the blockade of the modern day Auschwitz, the modern day concentration camp, and they're confronting the Nazis of our time. And everyone can see it now, thanks to Ben Gvir, thanks to that spectacle. So in many ways, they scored a major public relations win for humanity by exposing Israel. It's unfortunate they couldn't reach Gaza to help people and feed them and just to engage with them. I remember the two or three times I was in Gaza, just people were so desperate to talk to someone from the outside. It's like when you go visit a prison. Ben Gvir is the security minister in Netanyahu's cabinet. He's from a party it's called Otzma Yehudit, but that translates to Jewish power. You could think of it like in terms of like a supremacist, an openly supremacist party. It's grown from a very small party into one of the more popular parties in Israel because of the racist, fascist direction, the trajectory of Jewish Israeli youth. And he holds the linchpin to Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition, along with some ultra-Orthodox parties that don't want to participate in the military. And he exploits that to the hilt. He successfully just rammed through, or not didn't ram it through. He managed to put on the floor of the Knesset a very popular vote to execute Palestinian prisoners. You can find footage of him online of him posing beside a execution room where there's a noose dangling in the middle of the room. Shades of the Jim Crow South. For his birthday, he was gifted a cake with a noose on it. He is a disciple of the late Rabbi Meir Kahane, who was the first major public figure in Israel after moving from New York, where he helped form the Jewish Defense League and was an FBI informant. He came to Israel and started a party called Kach, which campaigned for the full ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. And he said something that was correct, which is that you can't have a Jewish and democratic state. You can be Jewish or democratic, not because Jews are undemocratic, but because if you are going to have an ethno state, you can't have all these other people here who are not Jewish voting and pretend to have a democracy. They're eventually going to, outbreed you, and then they can vote in their own person, or they will compromise our ability to have this supremacist state. So the best thing we can do is just kick them all out. And so it's been, and that was how a lot of Jewish Israelis felt at the time. This was in the, I think, late 1980s. The Likud party base agreed in a lot of ways with Kahane. He was winning many fans. And so under Yitzhak Shamir, the Likudnik prime minister, they actually banned him. They banned his party. And then they went and said to, the New York Times and the Western political class, we banned him because he's a racist and he sounds like the Nazis. But that's not why they banned him. They banned him because he was a competitor and a rival. So flash forward, his disciple Ben-Gvir does this sickening display of torturing European citizens who had come to bring aid to Gaza, and also to confront the blockade. They'd been, beaten before. We've heard stories of even a female flotilla activist being sexually brutalized and assaulted before, but he put it all on camera. He made them look like the Palestinians in the torture dungeons. You can't do that. So the European ambassadors all summon the European governments all summon the Israeli ambassadors. Giorgia Meloni, the right-wing prime minister of Italy, condemns Israel and says, you can't treat our citizens like this. This is disgusting. The Israeli foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar, from the right-wing racist Likud party, condemns Ben-Gvir. The Israeli ambassador to the United States, Yakir Leiter, who was a settlement activist in his youth, condemns Ben-Gvir and says, these are not our values. Next thing you know, they're tweeting out pictures of themselves giving water to the flotilla activists. Oh, they're so humanitarian and kind. We know what their values are. They do this to Palestinians day in and day out, and nobody condemns them or summons their ambassadors. So Ben-Gvir has caused a major PR crisis for Israel by exposing what it truly is, what its true values are, what militant Zionism in its contemporary form is. And now everyone can see it thanks to these brave flotilla activists who are willing to take the blows and the torture and are now some of them are still in hospitals. But Ben-Gvir is just the true face of Israel today. And we have to confront that. When you confront Zionism in its current form, it's Ben-Gvir.
Well, there has been some karma, and we don't hear about Hezbollah as much as we do Israel and Iran and Gaza. But I don't know if everyone knew about this, but it says today the Lebanese resistance targeted Colonel Biderman. He was the commander of the IDF's 401st Armored Brigade in South Lebanon. Israeli media reported that he is in a fight for his life. This is the same brigade that murdered Hin Rajab.
Yeah, I got to do a hard stop in 2 minutes. You should definitely have my colleague and friend Wyatt Reed on, who is in Beirut now and has been in the South covering the situation as close to the front as you can get. Follow his coverage at the Gray Zone, and we have a lot more to come from Wyatt. Israel has invaded southern Lebanon, and they've placed themselves in a quagmire again. Remember, Israel had to withdraw in 2000 after suffering casualties and crises at the hands of Hezbollah, which was formed to defend southern Lebanon from the Israeli occupation. Hezbollah was said to have been weakened. Netanyahu said, we've basically defeated them, sent in his troops. Hezbollah is staging more operations than we saw in 2024 when they were at war with Israel, and operating from a from a position of more strength. Hezbollah is operating, I think, in a stronger position tactically now, and they have a certain strategic advantage over Israel, which is that Israel has to hold this territory that they've captured. They're in a race to blow up and destroy as many homes as they can in southern Lebanon as possible, to destroy the support base of Hezbollah, which is the Shia population of southern Lebanon. And they're getting hit with these FPV fiber optic drones that are just simple 3D printed drones. Israel can't stop them. And so day after day, they're losing one or two soldiers. Armored personnel carriers are getting hit. Excavators are getting hit. And the losses are starting to pile up, and it's becoming a real political problem for Netanyahu, who would lose the election if it were held today. And the problem is only going to mount. And it's also a humanitarian crime. It's a real crime against this people of southern Lebanon, who are such dignified, steadfast people, just to see them lose their homes, lose medical clinics, have hospitals be bombed, churches are being bombed, to face this humiliation. But that's the cost of having Israel as your neighbor.
Yeah, Max Blumenthal, thank you so much for your time again, Max. Tell everybody anything you have coming up for the gray zone, or.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot coming up, but the work we're featuring from Wyatt in Lebanon is really special. And so subscribe to us on YouTube and you'll see all that, and Substack as well. It's free to sign up for us at Substack, and you'll get everything in your email, every day. So thanks a lot for having me on.
Thanks, Max.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gents, that was Max Blumenthal. Again, follow him on the Gray Zone. They're doing really good work. Hopefully I'll be able to get Wyatt as well, because I know Wyatt's out there in the Middle East currently. So we're going to continue on with our theme, ladies and gents, of you won't believe it. You just won't believe it. Eric, if we can go back to the first part of Type VNC, please. I think it froze for me a little bit. I'll go ahead and go to some of the comments here. The super chats. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Kenman. Sabby's outfit feels like spring. Oh, thank you. I'm glad it's getting a little bit warmer. Leroy says cannabis legalization also impacts for profit for big pharma as well. That's a good point. Thank you, Roger, for the super chat. Mondami closed a project $12 billion 2-year budget deficit with a massive infusion of money and brokered with Governor Hochul. Okay, that's how he got the money. Yeah, I didn't think it was a tax increase. Thank you for this one as well. The state aid allowed the city to balance its $104.7 billion executive budget without relying on rainy day reserves or raising property taxes. And thank you for this one. The CBIs that threaten power, corporate or government, must be ran as an amendment or risk being repealed or weakened without asking you first. Thank you for that reminder there. Notori, hello. Notori, your Twitter account is gone. I noticed that the other day. I was like, oh no, they got Notori. Thank you, Teta. Max, any idea on, I missed this one. Any idea on why Ahmadi was under house arrest? I'm sorry, I missed that one, Tata. Thank you, Sarah. Big food banks equal industrial complex, so not impressed with Mondami stores. I'm a small egg producer and donate directly to small pantries as big food banks charge the small pantries. Remove regulations on small farms and kitchens. That's interesting. Thank you, Roger. Holding my breath for Zohran till after governor election. Thank you, ADL. Oakland, California. Drain the swamp by enforcing all politicians the max of 2 terms, enforcing this by law or social norm. Yeah, I agree with term limits. We have like congressional members that are like 87, 85, still saying they're going to run for re-election. It's ridiculous. Thank you, Roger. Public financing of elections in California is not a potential measure, but a definite one that will definitely be on the November ballot. Good to know. Thank you, Dog's Nose. We are an Orange Banana Republic great stream. And thank you, Marvin. Any China, Russia military advisors in Cuba? Not that I know of, but I will check on that, Marvin. Okie dokie. All right, ladies and gents, if you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button for me. Thank you. And we're going to move on to the next story here. So just a reminder to everyone, this is Memorial Day weekend we're going into. So I won't have a live show this Sunday, but I will have videos that are uploaded while I am out and about. Let's get to the Michelle Obama story, shall we? Michelle Obama just recently had an interview, and she is walking back some of the things that she said, after like Donald Trump was elected in 2016. And I think people need to hear this because I guess sometimes when you have some time away and you talk to more people, you can start to see that maybe things weren't as you thought it was, especially when you're in it, right? Like she was the first lady. Her husband was president of the United States. There is going to be some bias there. So you're obviously going to want to defend your husband if you can as much as possible, right? But a lot of people don't know this unless you read her book. And I read Becoming, excuse me. I still get that wrong. I always say Becoming Michelle, but it's actually just Becoming. But one of the things I noticed in her book was that she was not fond of politics at all. And we're actually going to start with that part of the interview where she talks about how she was not fond of politics. And I have a little bit more to add to that story. If you read her book, you know about this as well. But this is the interview here that has people asking questions. Listen to this part.
And I knew that. It wasn't that I didn't believe in him. I just didn't like politics. Right. And I understood its limitations. And I'm more pragmatic and less of a dreamer. So that was my view all the way through. Mm-hmm. But I also thought, well, he has a passion for this. And I learned that, wow, when you find something that you do love, that's a gift. And it's not my place to stand in the way of that. I don't like it, but we are independent people. You support me. I support you. That will not be my life.
Yeah.
That's your life.
But even you not liking it, I mean, the amount of work you do for something you don't like. I mean, you're on the campaign trail.
I don't like politics.
They called you the closer.
I don't like politics. I love people.
Yeah.
So let me add something to this because she doesn't go as far into this in the interview as she does in the book. One of the things that Michelle Obama said was that the reason why she does not like politics is because of what she experienced when she was growing up. At one point or another, she was friends with one of Jesse Jackson's daughters. I forget which one in particular. I haven't read this book in a while, but she saw everything that Jesse Jackson's family went through when he was running for office. And she saw, I guess, like the stress that it brought on his family, including the daughter that she was friends with. Remember, she's from Chicago, so let's go way back. And because of what she saw with Jesse Jackson's election, that turned her off from politics and didn't want anything to deal with that. So when Barack Obama said that he wanted to run for office, and this is before he ran for president, I mean, like when he started to run for state house and all that stuff, state senate, she was not interested in that. She did not, and he kind of talked his way into running for president. She really did not want any part in that. And so if you have read her book, she goes a lot deeper into this and about how politics made her feel, going all the way back to when she was a teenager, that she really did not want to be involved, but she did so to support him. We'll go on a little bit more here, and then I'm going to get to that part where she said about the Trump election.
Yes.
And I love service. You're absolutely right. And I was surprised.
You went out there and you write so beautifully in Becoming about enduring the 2008 campaign trail. And you say it's important for young people to know about this chapter, about this experience when, quote, my whole persona was being distorted. What did that look like back then? Like, and how did the press try to distort you?
In my view, it was also a failing in Barack's campaign, his team of people. Because when I said, okay, I'm gonna, I didn't campaign for a state Senate office. I helped get petitions signed. I wasn't involved in his U.S. Senate race in a major way. I was supportive, but I had a career. I had small children, so on and so forth. I get out there on the campaign trail. I have a small team that I am given, people I hired, but the structure of it, I had my chief of staff, Melissa Winter, and I had my comms director, Katie McCormick Lullivell. And the three of us, 2 white women and me, and young, and we go out there and start going to Iowa. Site, that's all we do. We're given an assignment.
Yes.
Not a comms team, not speech training, not a speech writer, I talk to no one about.
Sounds like what she was saying here is that Obama's staff at that point in time did not prepare them. It sounds like to me that they were just basically going out there to wing it.
Out this. I got on the first flight out, landed, and there was some kid waiting to pick me up. It looked like you, Sam. Young, even though you think you look like an old man, you look like a baby. And that's what every staffer on the Obama campaign, they were amazingly precocious, smart, engaged, serious people.
Yes.
Somebody would have on a suit and I'd get in a car and be dropped off at somebody's house.
And you'd give speeches.
I would talk because I was like, I didn't have a speech, but I would tell my story.
So what was the distortion? What was the thing that hurt you?
The distortion was when I became more effective because it wasn't what I said. My take is that I was having an impact.
Oh, a positive impact.
A positive impact. I mean, the backyards turned into, churches, and then they turned into a gymnasium at a school. I mean, the numbers of people that were in Iowa that were curious about this campaign, this candidate, and then his wife, who gave them a glimpse into who he was as a man, his values, things like that. I think what I chose to talk about, which wasn't policy, I was like, I don't have time to learn about all of his policies because I still have a job. But I can talk about us as a family, that was appealing to people. And that was.
So that was something that I did not know happened, because imagine someone doing that today. It was kind of weird. Like if the future first lady was being dropped off at people's houses and going to their backyards and just talking about their family, that sounds kind of weird today, right? But this is a time before Twitter, Facebook, and all of that. So sometimes we have to take our brains back there before social media. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what people used to do back then. They used to actually just go out and around and just talk to people face to face more so, right? They didn't have like this social media team that was really like going to do the mile for them. Well, nowadays you can just have like a social media team and they do all this stuff for you. But before all of that, people actually went out there to talk to the people. Now, here's the part that she walks back. And I was surprised she actually said this. This is about the people who voted for Trump in 2016. And I've heard her talk about this multiple times before. And I think one of the mistakes that she made, which she does walk back, you'll see, is that assuming that everybody who voted for Donald Trump was automatically racist. Are there racists that voted for Donald Trump? Yes. But just because someone voted for Donald Trump doesn't mean that they were racist. And I was surprised that after all these years, she mentions what she believed the real issue was right here.
When Donald Trump wins in 2016 and 2024, how did your thinking about the country you live in change? Did it change by the passage of time?
I mean, I was deeply, deeply disappointed. But my husband is such a good person to have for context and clarity. And he's right. That outcome had as much to do with people's pain and confusion about where they are in their lives. We haven't completed the assignment of actualizing this democracy. It works, and then a lot of times, and for a lot of people, it doesn't. I've seen it all. I've experienced it all. I know what it's like to be underestimated, underinvested in. And that's happening all over the country, more and more as the income gap is widened, and more people are falling through the cracks and experiencing worse than what I did growing up.
So this part is important here, right? It's basic economics. Basic economics, and I feel like corporate media didn't get this right at the time. But when you look at it, and I'm going to show you the data in just a second, the reality is when you're looking at the people who did vote for Obama twice and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump, it's basic economics. We're talking about the people that during that time, you're coming through the 2008 housing crisis. And don't get me wrong, the economy already started to fail under George W. Bush's second term. And so Obama did inherit some of that. But I think what people expected was when we had that housing crisis, that the people who had their homes stolen from them, because if you know the story like I know it, a lot of elders as well, they were targeted the most. The people who had their homes stolen from them, they just lost their homes. There was no bailout for them, but there was a bailout for Wall Street. When you look at the data shows, in particular for the Black community, Black wealth tanked under Barack Obama's presidency partly in part because of the housing crisis and some of his economic policies. And for some reason, like when Donald Trump won in 2016, it seemed like to me all people could point the finger to was they voted for him because they were racist or they were misogynist. And that was it. And apparently nothing else. When the data actually showed otherwise.
My father had a job his entire life. He was never unemployed. We never worried about our rent. We had health care. He could put us through college. We could afford college, even though it was expensive. The basics. More Americans had more of the basics, and that's becoming less and less. And my gosh, when you don't have a chance, and you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and that's happening for people of all races and all colors in all parts of this country, in cities and rural counties and on farms, and people who are like my dad.
So what people have to understand here, Eric, that's slowing down a little bit for some reason. I don't know why. But what people have to understand, again, is that that's something that people should have realized back then. I mean, we're talking about almost 10 years ago. And the economy is still trash. Look at where we are now. When you are working hard and you still can't get ahead, I mean, eventually, you got to look at the system. So I was shocked that Michelle Obama finally realized what the big issue was, which is that their lives did not improve. Some of the people who did go out there and vote for him twice, economically, it did not get better for them. So the next person that comes along who is not a politician, and they look at him and they're like, oh, well, he's a businessman. He's successful. Everybody knows that he has all these different, real estate investments, and he has his own show, and he's been doing business for years. Maybe we just need a businessman. And I heard people say this during that time. Maybe we don't need a politician as president. Maybe we need a businessman. There were people that thought that. The point is, when people are desperate, when people are in despair, they are willing to look and see who is going to get me out of this hole. That's what they're looking for. Now, we'll go on a little bit more here. And then I want to show you the data because I want to prove a point. Let me add this here.
And experiencing worse than what I did growing up. You know, my father had a job his entire life. He was never unemployed. We never worried about our rent. You know, we had health care. He could put us through college. We could afford college, even though it was expensive. The basics. More Americans had more of the basics. And that's becoming less and less. And my gosh, when you don't have a chance and you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and that's happening for people of all races and all colors in all parts of this country, in cities and rural counties and on farms, and people who are like my dad, that makes you angry and it makes you susceptible to find someone to blame other than the people who are rightfully a part of the problem. And that's true. That anger, you know, I can't look some people in the face and tell them you have no right to be angry or to do something that maybe is against your own interests. That's human nature. Many of the people who voted for my husband twice, twice. And I know that that's how they feel. It's like, this isn't about anything other than we need something different.
Yeah. They voted for Donald Trump. Yeah.
You know?
That's a lot of people.
So you can't just pigeonhole them and say you just don't care and you're racist or whatever you're thinking. This is an act of, I don't know what else to do. I just wish we had more leaders that were figuring out how to do more for the middle class.
She finally got it. It also doesn't help that Hillary didn't campaign in the Rust Belt and Donald Trump did. I noticed that she did say middle class. They tend to focus a lot on that. They don't really focus on the poor. Have you guys ever noticed that? It's always middle class, right? But after all these years, she finally got it. It's economics. It's basic economics. And the data is going to show you this. So we're going to go back in time. We're going back to 2008. I want to show you how groups voted in 2008 because I just want to prove a point. All right. Here's Obama here in the middle, right here. And here's McCain to the right. I just want everybody to notice how this 2008 election went. Check this out. We're going to go by the demographics because I want to prove a point here. Look at the demographics. 43% of white voters voted for Obama, 55% for McCain. This is the big one that's going to change. When it comes to black voters, 95%, Obama got 95%. Hope you guys can see that well right there. 95%. McCain got 4%. Obama received 67% of Hispanic voters. This is in 2008 because I'm going to show you the change. McCain received 31%. Obama received 62% of Asian American voters. McCain received 35%. And then when it comes to other, Obama got 66%. McCain got 31%. Everybody got it? Okay. Let's go to 2012. Because see, the change doesn't start in 2016. The change actually begins in 2012. And this is the part I think that sometimes is just not talked about as much. But let's go back to those same groups of people because I want to prove a point. You can see who things got better for, right? Barack Obama. In 2012, 39% of white Americans voted for Obama. 59% voted for Romney. So you're already seeing a decrease with the white vote. We go back to 2008. He received 43% of white voters. And in 2012, 39%. Let's go to the black vote. In 2012, he received 93%. Now you already see a decline here. Everybody keeps saying it all started in 2016, but no, the decline started before then. So from 95% to 93% African American voters you see there. Not as sharp of a decline as, you might imagine, but it's going to get worse over time. Trust me. So follow me here. Romney received 6% of the black vote. Everybody noticing a shift here? Automatically, you saw 4% of black voters went to the Republican Party in 2008 for McCain. As we go into 2012, that now increases to 6%. When we look at the Hispanic vote for Obama, he now has 71% of that vote. Romney has 27%. Asian Americans, he has 73%. Romney has 26%. And for other, Obama has 58% and Romney has 38%. I'm going to point out something here. The Hispanic vote and the Asian vote. When we look back at 2008, you notice something? Obama received an increase of Hispanic voters and Asian voters come 2012, because in 2008, he received 67% of the Hispanic vote. In 2012, he got 71%. See the increase? In 2008, Obama received 62% of the Asian American vote. Oh, I think it froze on me, Eric. I don't know how I got stuck here. Oh, there we go. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. Okay. 2008, he got 62% of the Asian vote. But in 2012, he got 73% of the Asian vote. The reason why I'm showing you this is because I'm trying to prove something to you. Barack Obama decreased with white voters and black voters in 2012. Nobody's talking about this. He had an increase with Hispanic voters and Asian American voters in 2012. But when you look at all the other groups, he decreased. What does that tell you? Why did he have an increase for Hispanic voters in 2012 and Asian American voters in 2012? Why do you think? Did Obama have any type of policy that was, and we've gone through this before now, who was directly impacted the most by the 2008 housing crisis? And did Barack Obama have any type of direct plan for Black Americans? No. This is all important when we get to Hillary, because Hillary comes in 2016. And you really have to follow the pattern. A lot of times I think the Democratic Party, they don't really want to go hard on Obama. So they're not telling you what I'm telling you for a reason. But when Hillary comes in, now she gets this, okay? All of a sudden, the black vote under Hillary Clinton has now dropped to 89%. And it continues in this direction, by the way. This is why Kamala Harris didn't get more of the black vote. It continues in this direction. Trump gets 8%. So you see how the black vote continues to increase a little bit, but towards the Republican candidate. Hillary received 66% of the Hispanic vote. Trump got 28%. She received 65% of the Asian American vote. Trump got 27%. She received 56 for other. Trump received 36 for other. Hillary's numbers, all of them, white voters, black voters, Hispanic, Asian, and other, are all lower than Obama's. As you can see, I mean, even the black voters that did not vote for Hillary, all of them didn't go say, okay, I'm all going to go vote for Donald Trump. People stayed home. You get me? The point that I'm trying to make is this. because of Barack Obama's failure to bail out the people who had their homes stolen from them by the predatory banks, and he bailed out Wall Street instead, that changed things. That fundamentally changed things in this country. There's a couple other issues too. One of the things he said he would do on day one was codify Roe v. Wade. That ain't happened. All of a sudden he won and said, yeah, I can't do it. Then there was the healthcare issue. He was pushing universal healthcare when he was running in 2008. Best we could do was Obamacare, and that was a disaster when it started off. But you guys get where I'm going. The economic decision, the economic situation for a lot of people did not improve. Now, if you know the data, and the data shows you that economically Black Americans are at the bottom, what do you think is going to happen as a voting populace? When you look at the map, it tells you everything. If you look at the 2008 map, the electoral map, I'm going to show you the states he ends up losing in 2012. Again, a lot of people don't point to this. He picked up North Carolina, Florida. He got Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Barack Obama got the entire blue wall, plus Virginia. This is when Virginia turns blue, and North Carolina and Florida. That was 2008. Watch what changes in 2012. Again, this is basic economics. In 2012, he keeps Virginia. He loses North Carolina. That's when North Carolina reverts to a red state again. He keeps Florida. He loses Indiana. This is when Indiana turns red. He keeps Ohio. He keeps Pennsylvania. So you guys see all that? This matters because what I'm showing you is that the Democratic Party already started losing those states before the 2016 election. This is how we lost Indiana. Then when you go to the 2016 election, Donald Trump comes in and bam, there goes the blue wall. Because all it took was to turn Indiana red, and then you had a domino effect. Ohio became red, Pennsylvania became red, Michigan, Wisconsin, all red, red, red. Now, Biden came in and was able to get that blue wall back, which is, again, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Biden came in and was able to get that back. And then Kamala ran in 2024 and it went right back to Trump. And yes, there are some people who are not going to vote for these people because they're racist or they don't want a female president. Yes, those people do exist, but that's not everybody. And the reality is, you really have to look at, and if I could ever have a panel on this show about this, I would love to do it. If I could ever have a panel of guests of people who voted for Obama twice and then turned around and voted for Trump in 2016, I think you guys would understand it's economics. That's a big part of it. So I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe that Michelle Obama finally admitted that's really what a big part of it was. And whoever comes in next, I'm telling you, going into 2028, they need to look at what I just looked at with you. And the one thing that you cannot do, you cannot ignore the Rust Belt. I think that's a lesson to be learned about that. But it's economics, people. It's basic economics. And at the end of the day, if the needs of the people are not met, if people are still struggling to get by, they're going to go to the next guy or the next woman or the next this or the next that. And they'll keep trying different things and different people because they're desperate and they're trying to see, okay, who's going to be the one to help fix the economic situation in this country. And it's only going to get to a point now where more people are starting to wake up to this. where we're getting closer and closer to a revolution than I thought. Because if you have noticed since 2016, no party has had 2 consecutive terms in the White House. We've bounced. Things are changing. And I think there's a lot to say for that. And now with the Trump administration, Trump is just so blatant about everything. I mean, he just puts it out there. Yeah, we're going to send more money to Israel. Yeah, I'm going to do money here. Yeah, I'm going to da-da-da. Just blatantly in your face. God said right in your face. Told you he doesn't care about American finances. Just out in the open now. So we may be closer and closer to a revolution than I think. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Roger. The good thing is that ballot measure was put there by the legislature, not the citizens. So highly unlikely they'll repeal their own measure. Thank you. Thank you for the super sticker, OMG. Thank you, M. Rish. Now she is critical at no cost to her/husband. Thank you, Kinman. It's the economy, stupid. Exactly. Thank you, Roger. The increased voter turnout on those with immigrant background was due to favorable policy, DACA, while we got none, explains decrease for us. And a lot of people stayed home. That's a big part of the problem. Like, and you saw how many people stayed home come 2024. You know, Black people are tired. We're tired. I don't know how to tell it to people. I'm like, we are tired. We're tired. Now, many of you ask, what do we do about it? Some of these things we can do on our own. Let me put this here. Some of these things we can do on our own. Some of them, like mutual aid, you have to build dual power. We can't sit back and just rely on the president to fix and do the right thing. The corruption's really out in the open this time around. Like, I've never seen it this out in the open. Like, damn, they're blatant about it, right? So we can't rely on them to do the right thing. You just can't. Maybe they might do some things right, but the reality is no. You have to build dual power. One of the ways that you do that is through mutual aid. So if you haven't come to one of my workshops, come to it. It's free. It's virtual. We do it via Zoom. The next mutual aid workshop will be May 30th. That's a Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So save the date. I send the invite via my Substack newsletter. So if you're signed up for my newsletter, you'll see that invite go out next week. We have to build dual power. And the reason why they don't want you, and this is why I keep telling you guys, the reason why they don't want you to talk about community building or organizing, you notice everything is socialism now. Those people are organizing. That's socialism. Those people are doing community work. That's socialism. Everything is socialism. They try to use it as a boogie word to scare you. But the reality is, nah, it's called community, which used to be a thing before. The last thing they want you to do is to realize that you may not really need them. Think about that. All right, ladies and gents, we have one more story for you. This one is hilarious. Oh my God. Get ready for this one. If you haven't had a chance to do so, smash the like button. We're going to go ahead and dive into this one. This is wild shit. Hunter Biden had an interview with Candace Owens today. I watched the entire interview. And I have to say, Hunter Biden, you know damn well you told a number of lies in that interview. And we're going to check some of them on this show. Because I was sitting there watching it, and the first thing I said to myself is, I sincerely hope he talks about his business dealings with Burisma. Nope. He gets into the laptop. He talks about like his addiction. And then he said some off the wall crazy shit when it came to Gaza. I don't know if Hunter Biden is on like this redemption tour or whatever, but the impression that I got from this interview was that he was looking for some type of empathy or sympathy. That was the impression I got. And then I also noticed he was wearing the same shirt that he wore in previous interviews. So maybe that's like his interview shirt. I don't know what's going on. And then part of it made me wonder, is Hunter Biden going to try to run for some type of political office? Is that what this is about? So let's go ahead and get into this first part here when he's talking about addiction, because there's one thing he keeps talking about this, but there's one important part that he does not mention. And I think is very important.
I was saying to you before we started rolling, that this was sort of something that I noticed when I would cover various topics, whether it was pornography, drugs on my show, drinking, how many men would write and say they were suffering with various things, and yet they don't often speak about like how they're quietly suffering whether it's with addiction to pornography, addiction to drugs. And I don't think there are enough conversations about it. And so when I watched that interview of you just laying it out there, something that most people try to hide or they're shameful of, I was like, there actually just needs to be more dialogue about it. I grew up with tons of addicts in my family. I have people in my family who are still addicted. And I think there is a natural anger that people have when they, for some reason, believe, and I think this was part of the anger that that I had toward you before I heard you speak about your addiction, is that you sort of think when somebody has money and political connections, that somehow removes them from going through these sorts of barriers in life. So when I grew up, it's like, oh, okay, like you have uncles, whatever, that are addicted to crack. You have cousins that are doing crack, whatever it is, or experimenting with meth and drugs and those things. And then you see someone that has a life of privilege, and for some reason in your mind, you wrongly go, okay, that can't happen. And it did happen. And I'd like to hear like how you got addicted. Like what was actually the story, your path toward addiction?
Yeah. So
like I said, interview shirt. That's the same shirt he wore in these interviews. But listen, let's say this first and foremost. This is not to shame anybody that has struggled with addiction. I've known people that have struggled with addiction. It's a very hard thing to deal with. And people will tell you that if they're an addict, even if they've been sober for X number of years, they'll tell you that they're still an addict. It's something they have to live with for the rest of their life. So for me, that's not what this is about. What this is about for me is that when Hunter Biden tells the story about what he went through and how he was able to be treated for it, I think there's something very important that he omits that everybody needs to hear. So let him say what he's got to say, and then I'm going to tell you.
Thank you for letting me talk about that, or asking me about it. And I really mean it. It's one of the things that traps people. I can only speak about myself, but I think that people that are in that are addicts or that are in recovery, also you find out really fast is that you're not as terminally unique as you think you are. Is that and one of the things that that is really important about addicts talking to each other and talking about it is that realization, because one of the things that traps you in your addiction is shame. And you like me are Catholic, and we have learned that guilt is an appropriate emotion. Guilt is an appropriate response to something when you've done something wrong, and you're supposed to atone for it, and you're supposed to seek forgiveness, whether the forgiveness comes from an individual or not. That's the lesson, is that it is in only through seeking that forgiveness can you release yourself from that guilt. That's appropriate. Shame is not. Shame is just absolutely corrosive. Shame is you telling yourself that you're not worthy, that you're never going to be worthy, that you.
I have to pause here for a second. I'll let Eric, if you can refresh that. It's a little glitchy, but let's talk about forgiveness here for just a second, then we'll get back to that, okay? Hunter Biden, through his struggles with addiction, one of the things that he's talked about is that he was able to go to rehab. He was able to get treatment. And again, like I said, addiction is not something that's easy for people to kick, right? What I feel like Hunter Biden does not discuss when he talks about his addiction and the treatment that he was able to go through. Hunter Biden admits that he was addicted to crack. This is significant. Hold on to that for a second, okay? Not marijuana, not, alcohol, really, not, cocaine, although I think he said he's done cocaine, but he said he was addicted to crack. The part that Hunter Biden does not bring up is that while he had an addiction to crack and he's on camera multiple times smoking crack, he was able to go to rehab. That was the opportunity that was afforded to him. Hunter Biden needs to remember and realize that many others who were in his same position, who were also addicted to crack, did not get the opportunity to go to rehab. They went straight to prison. And the reason why they went straight to prison, and some of them for 20 plus years, was because of the legislation that was co-written by his father. Everybody understand me? Joe Biden co-wrote the crime bills. There were multiple, not one. He co-wrote the crime bills with Strom Thurmond. Bill Clinton signed onto this too, but Bill Clinton apologized and all this kind of stuff. But let me be clear about this. When Hunter Biden talks about forgiveness, those people did not get the opportunity for forgiveness. When his daddy stood on the Senate floor and he said, I don't care what environment they grew up in, I want them off the streets. When he made that big speech in support of the crime bills, when were those people offered forgiveness? When were they able to go to rehab just like Hunter Biden was? You see, Hunter Biden didn't go straight to jail. Hunter Biden didn't have to do 20 years in jail. Those people did. And the crime bills that were written by his father predominantly attacked Black communities. Whereas Hunter Biden could have piles and piles of crack and he goes to rehab, but people in the Black neighborhoods can have just a tiny piece, which all of a sudden now means 20 plus years. So when he does these interviews and he talks about, I did this and I struggled with that and I went to rehab and I've been sober for all these years, cool. But I also think that Hunter Biden needs to address the fact that because of who his father was and because of who he is, he was not sentenced to jail for 20 plus years. So while he's asking people for forgiveness, where was the forgiveness for all those people, all those men who were locked up for even having less amount of drugs than Hunter Biden? Where was their forgiveness at? His father was just president. One of the easy things that Joe Biden could have done, Joe Biden could have pardoned those people, but he did not. Joe Biden could have stopped the for-profit prison system, but he did not. And every time he does these interviews, he does not acknowledge that. That's a problem. So let's go on more with this.
That the things that you've done, you could never be redeemed from. And I've done horrible things in my addiction in terms of what I did, in terms of my relationships and decisions that I made. And more than anything is just removing myself from being present for the people that love me. And what happened to me, and I really mean this, is that the exposure, not piecemeal, but the total exposure, my entire digital footprint stolen from me, a 20-year digital footprint, every text message, every picture, all of the things that that you would be ashamed of became front page news for 4 years, 5 years, beginning in 2019. And it forced me into a choice. And the choice was, do I get out of bed and live, or do I die? and it became that much of a dichotomy. And I chose to live, and it wasn't easy. And maintaining sobriety in that kind of like a pressure cooker, is often the thing that triggers you. But something broke in me in a good way, which was that I no longer have any fear. I like, sitting down with you is, to me, an opportunity for you to see me as a human being and not, Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah.
So you see, this is why I feel like Hunter Biden is going to try to run for some type of political office. I think this is like his redemption tour, and he's going on to different shows and all that jazz, and he's trying to, I don't know, kind of redeem himself. The first, like, I guess half of this interview, they talk about like his addiction, they get into the laptop, and then we're going to go to the Gaza stuff in just a second. But the part that I really want people to take home with them is that Hunter Biden had everything like available to him, man. Like everything available to him. And it almost came across to me that he was looking for some type of sympathy for this interview. And there were so many other things that I wished would have been asked. Like, I was surprised, and people were saying it in the chat as well. I was surprised that Candace did not ask him about his business dealings with Burisma in Ukraine. That's one of the big things people want to know about now. I don't know if maybe he said he wasn't going to talk about that prior to the interview. Maybe he did. I don't know. But Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma in Ukraine, and there had been speculations of some type of kickbacks. And so I would have thought that would have been one of the things that would have been questioned. Nothing there. Nothing. Now, Candace did say at the very beginning of the interview that she did tell him that she wasn't going to say, ask him to say bad things about his dad. Right. So she says that at the very beginning. But he offers up information about his dad. Right. So let's go to the laptop part, since he brings that up, because he's not honest with the laptop part either. Let's get into this part right here.
Yeah. By the way, here's the problem, is that Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani saved the quote unquote laptop, which, by the way, is bullshit. Like, if we can agree on that gaslighting, I will agree on the gaslighting of this, is that there was never a quote unquote laptop. There was a hard drive of stolen and hacked material, wherever it came from, whether it came from a Delaware repair shop or whether it came, like Lev Parnas says, from Dmitry Firtash, who was trying to sell a hard drive of Hunter Biden's in Ukraine, that they were looking for before the laptop repair shop guy was ever the twinkle in the eye. Just go back and look at the record. Okay. So here's the thing, is you're absolutely right. And and this is like the freedom of being able to say this. It's like, yeah, they should have let me go out and talk.
Yeah.
But it was 2 weeks before the campaign. And then then the election was over. Steve Bannon, it goes on and with his buddy Gao, the Chinese billionaire that's now in prison, and that is like a Chinese spy or whatever, where he got arrested on his boat and all that crap. There is go listen to it. Go listen to the recorded conversation in which they say, like, the laptop, like, we got him. We, so we we collected all the salacious pictures and we put them out there. And then Rudy went out and stood on the steps of the Newcastle County Courthouse with Bernie Carrick and said, this contains child exploitation, like pure, pure bullshit, just bullshit. So on both sides, you have this reaction, which I don't think was necessarily a coordinated reaction in the sense that, what do you do in 2 weeks? And so they come up with this and they say, and I don't get to go out and say, no, I was. But you know what I did? Is that come April, I write a book and I tell everybody, I was addicted to crack.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my story.
Let me just pause here for a second. This story with the laptop, okay? Hunter Biden says that they should have just let me come out and talk and respond to it. We have to remember the era that we're in, right? So it's not like this was 2005. If Hunter Biden wanted to do an interview, especially in the podcast age, he could have picked up the phone and contact anyone and they would have brought him on. I bet you Joe Rogan would have brought him on. If Hunter Biden really wanted to come out and come forward and talk, regardless of what they were saying around him because, oh, there was a presidential election company. If he wanted to do it, he's a grown man. He could have reached out and talked to anyone. So whether they told him not to do it or not, I don't really know. Don't really care. In the end, as an adult, you make that decision. So you see how he's trying to put the blame on, well, they wouldn't let me. What do you mean they would not let you?
And here's what happened. And here is all of the rooms that no one would ever want to admit to being in that I was in. And it was like a blip on the radar because everybody was now fighting about whether there was kind of a suppressed story on Twitter and whether there was this gaslighting from, and by the way, I am not here to defend any of
But then
those
it's
people.
part of like the political machine where they're like, we have 2 weeks to go to the election.
Yeah.
We're going to do this denial, because we can't afford this right now, essentially.
Yeah.
And then we're going to table this, make it past these 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then by that time, first and foremost,
by
your
the way,
father
yeah.
won,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and
But he kind of skirts around this. It was a suppressed story. And it wasn't just suppressed on Twitter. Don't forget that Glenn Greenwald, the reason why Glenn Greenwald was no longer with The Intercept is because they would not let him run the Hunter Biden laptop story. One thing I will say we learned also from the Twitter files is that they did not want Twitter to elevate that story. So they said, suppress it, bury it as much as possible. And the way that they do that is they would change the algorithm for exactly like those words, like Hunter Biden, laptop, etc., or whatever. And so if you posted about it, it would probably get instead of getting like 1,000 views, it'd probably get like 300 or 200 views. They can do that when they own the platform. They can suppress it in that way, shape, or form. You get me? So that was real. He's like, well, it was on, they said it might have been suppressed on Twitter and da-da-da. No. The evidence shows it was a suppressed story. And it was suppressed to protect your father. So it wouldn't harm him in that presidential election. And I believe that if Hunter Biden really wanted to tell that story, regardless of what the people around him said, no, I'm not going to let you talk about it, he would have contacted someone and he would have told that story. So the amount of gaslighting that came from Hunter Biden during this, I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
so people are angry. They feel like the election's been stolen and that there was this entire collusion to cover a laptop, which if it was on the other side, they may have done too. This is what DC is. It's politics. But that is where I think the anger came from.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
I get it.
how dare you gaslight us?
Yeah.
And then people then start making you this focal point of
And it never had anything to do with me.
right. It was
And,
kind of bigger than you at that point.
You know what the laptop proved?
That you were a crackhead.
There you go.
That you
By
were
the way,
deep in the throes of crack
all this
addiction.
other bullshit, bribery and all these other things that they investigated up and down during the Trump administration with a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, with the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, the only U.S. attorney in the country to stay on and continue to prosecute me, who then became special counsel after I got a plea deal because I paid my taxes late. And I paid them with penalties and interest, and I owned a gun for 11 days. While they say I was addicted and check that box. That's it. Everybody has all the information. It's not like the Department of Justice has my digital footprint in every text message, every email. And there's not a single one in which you find that would in any way supports the really serious accusations of enriching my father, enriching himself somehow, or none of it's there.
See, this is what I'm talking about. No, my father enriching himself somehow. Burisma and the dealings with Ukraine. Hunter Biden was on the board. Look it up. Google it. There's multiple articles about this. Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. He won't say the word. Did you notice that? He won't say Burisma. This is why I was like, dude, people in the chat keep saying Burisma. Doesn't want to talk about this for some reason. Why? Like, I was watching this and I said, I can't believe the amount of gaslighting that I'm seeing right now. Like, it's just no, We're going a little bit more here and then we got to get to the Gaza part. That's hilarious.
So I own whatever you want to call it. I own the laptop. Come, you know what? We can go through it together.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to like avert your eyes to the tragedy of addiction. I mean, just the absolute tragedy of it.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, there is no space for that in discourse anymore. There's no space for the nuance of, well, that was addiction. That wasn't corruption. I did not do any business through entire 4 years. I became a painter. You know why I became a painter? Because it literally saved my life. I painted my whole life. And Melissa instinctively knew that I literally needed to like occupy my hands in early recovery, like 12 hours a day. Like just, like to be able to focus on not the crushing weight of the consequences of years of addiction.
So notice how the pivot, once talking about the corruption, he pivots from the corruption to talking about, well, I'm dealing with the addiction. But that doesn't answer the questions about possible corruption, though. That's the thing. That doesn't answer that question. And everything goes back to the addiction. And I want to say this, and again, nobody take this the wrong way. Like I said, I know people that have struggled with addiction as well, but nobody take this the wrong way. I have known and been very close to people who have struggled with addiction. And one of the things that I noticed is the art of manipulation and gaslighting. And the entire time I'm listening to Hunter Biden talk, and I'm just like, I feel like this is manipulation again. I feel like this is gaslighting. And some of you may be watching and maybe you have known also someone who struggled with addiction. So you know what I'm talking about. You know how it could be, oh, I just need this money so I'm just a little bit behind on my bill. So I'm just going to go ahead and pay my bill. But that money is actually for you know what? So the entire time I'm watching this, like this is all just sinking in. And I'm just like, I feel like he's manipulating people. Now, we're going a little bit more here, and then we got to get to the Gaza part.
And so I just sat and I painted and I painted and I painted. And I decided to have a show in the gallery and, and offer my paintings for sale. And the New York Post comes out and says, Hunter Biden's selling his paintings for $500,000. I've never sold a painting nor offered a painting for $500,000 in my friggin' life. And by the way, everybody knows this because every painting that I sold, everybody that bought a painting had to pay about $250,000 to defend themselves before an impeachment hearing. Go read the transcripts of people under oath. But regardless, is the laptop absolutely proved nothing, but it became this cultural touchstone. It was like it embodied the Biden crime family.
Mm-hmm.
But then why was it suppressed, Hunter? Why were the news outlets told to remove the story? Why is it that all of a sudden the link no longer worked? Why was Twitter told to suppress the story? Why was Glenn Greenwald not allowed to run that story through The Intercept if there was nothing to be seen? Let's go to the Biden part. he brings up his father here when he gets into the Gaza situation. And this, honestly, was probably the worst of the worst. Listen to this.
It says everything anyone needs to know about where we are.
Yeah.
The idea that you feel unsafe in the United States of America because you disagree with the current administration on a issue that 70% of Americans agree with you on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we all can agree is that we need to stop the wholesale murder of a population in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Pause. You guys probably know what I'm going to say, right? He said, I think we all can agree, right? Well, apparently not your daddy. Because your father, who said, yeah, we need to get a ceasefire, come to find out after his presidency, never, ever, ever demanded a ceasefire. Because your father is a Zionist. Supported everything that Israel was doing. So it's not, we all can agree. You and Candace can probably agree. But your daddy, who the genocide started under his presidency, your daddy did not agree.
Whatever you think about my father's policy as it relates, I always say to people, one thing he didn't do? He didn't greenlight to turn Gaza into a Trump golf course, with the maitre d' being Jared Kushner.
No, but your father aided and abetted a genocide. And I honestly, and I'll let it finish, but I was honestly shocked, because I felt like I expected Candace to say that, and she didn't say what I just said. It's just really weird to me. This guy's sitting there and he's like, well, my father didn't give Gaza over to Trump and, make some golf course. No, he didn't. But let's stop pretending like a whole damn genocide didn't happen and start under your father when people were out in the streets chanting Genocide Joe. Let's not pretend like your daddy's hands are clean, Hunt. They're not. This started under his presidency. If anything, if we all agreed that there shouldn't have been no killing there, your daddy would have stopped sending them weapons, don't you think? But he disagreed. Didn't Kamala Harris recently come out not too long ago? It's in her fucking book where she said that she tried to get Joe Biden to have some type of sympathy for the Palestinians, but he just wouldn't. So let's not sit here, Hunter, and pretend like your daddy actually had sympathy for these Palestinians. Bernie Sanders said the same damn thing. Bernie Sanders and AOC said we tried to tell him behind the scenes. What does that tell you guys about Joe Biden? What you think you think he would have sympathy for these Palestinian kids? He didn't have no sympathy for black people right here in the United States. You think he gonna care about the brown ones abroad? But you're not supposed to say that because Biden was a Democrat. Get out of here. So that is wild to me that he said this, and he said it to Candace's face right there on her show, and he knows her position on this, and she knows that she was complaining about it under Biden and under Trump. So let me continue.
$4 billion in Saudi money.
It's despicable.
Despicable.
Yeah. It's just like they did the deal before. I mean, when he posted that, I'll never forget that, posted the Trump, here's what Gaza could be, and I could have my name in a building, and I was like,
but literally that's what they're doing.
This is dead children. You're literally saying this is all going to be fine because we're going to get up a Trump resort or something. Positively despicable. I mean, just positively despicable, tasteless, indefensible. And
it's not a joke, though, is my point.
It wasn't a joke, and that is the deal.
And that's what they're doing. Literally doing. And by the way,
and Candace did not push back on the Biden part at all. She didn't push back at all. That is so weird to me. Like, why not push back and say, yeah, but the genocide started under your father? I couldn't believe she did not push back on that. Because you can still agree what Trump is doing is bullshit and is fucked up, that he's taking over the land, and people are still being killed in Gaza. But you can also add, but it started under your father too. So your daddy's hands are not clean. I don't get this at all. This, to me, this whole thing was just very strange.
They're doing it out in the open. I mean, it's not as if they're hiding it in any way. I mean, they are making deals as they go through. You know, like I always say to people, it's like, you had such a problem with me. I didn't do any business.
I'll take the paintings.
I didn't do a single business. Every single person that bought a painting from me during the time my dad was there in office. I had 2 shows and probably sold a total of 20 paintings, and 13 of them to my best friend. You know, and that's it. That's it. And you had a problem, not you. Well, you too, but they had a problem with me as being this emblem of corruption. These guys, okay, Don Jr. got the single largest loan guarantee from the Department of Defense ever handed out, of over $600 million for an energy company, a fusion energy company, of which he has zero experience in. They have gotten Jared Kushner, who's never run a private equity fund, has now a $4 billion private equity fund with 80% of the money coming from the Middle East, of which he continues to raise as he is the ambassador at large on behalf of the Trump administration, not as a political appointee, but simply as a son-in-law of the president, to come to a peace deal of a war in Iran that they started that has cost the economy billions and billions of dollars for a war nobody wanted, that every president before him, was pressured by the Israelis to get into. And every single one, regardless what you think of them, from Jimmy Carter, through President Reagan, through both of the Bushes, through Clinton, through my dad, said, you're out of your damn minds. And here's the reason why. This is what.
But here's something else that Hunter Biden is not being truthful about. It was outed on corporate media, by the way. It was outed on left-leaning corporate media that one of the advisors to Joe Biden had already let the cat out the bag that Joe Biden, going into re-election, because he wasn't planning on going anywhere, keep this in mind, going into re-election, that Joe Biden was already making plans for how to attack Iran, that he was fully ready to do that. Hunter Biden is leaving that completely out of the story. Anything to absolve his father. Don't you guys think that's important for people to know? So this is why I say, like, I cannot believe, like, Candace, with as much of the research that she does for her show, I could not believe she did not push back here. I can't believe she didn't. I couldn't believe she didn't push back when he was like, well, say whatever you want about my dad, but he didn't do da-da-da-da. I cannot believe she didn't push back. And that's why I say this whole thing to me was just weird. Very strange to me.
What's going to happen? So who benefits right now? You know who benefits? The people that are making trades of billions of dollars on market manipulation that occur.
Insider
And
trading
it's literally out in the open. But who's gonna
you will not get a disagreement out of me. Like, I am so far off the Trump train. He's posting.
No,
me
by the way, and I'm not even saying it.
Like,
For
it's
the
embarrassing.
purposes of, like,
But it is embarrassing. It is embarrassing because we got behind him as the answer to corruption. We thought he was going to be this outsider. You know, he's going to go to DC. He's going to drain the swamp, and then he became the Loch Ness monster. You know, and so it's like, I don't know what it is about that swamp, but you get swimming in it, and it's like people do this. And yes, it has been for Israel. Not to say that Trump wasn't pro-Israel. Most presidents actually are pro-Israel when they go in there, and if they go anti-Israel, they kind of end up dead. But it's or they sort of get kicked out. If you want to talk about Nixon and the scandal of Watergate, which I've revisited and did think that had a lot more to do with his shifting viewpoints, but that wasn't the issue. Like, I was pro-Israel, generally speaking, not very educated about the topic. It's this level of corruption that you're talking about when you are willing to let real Americans be harmed, their day-to-day lives be harmed. They're suffering at the gas pump. Their groceries are expensive. All at so that you could further enrich. How much more money does the Trump family need? I mean, just like literally, how much more money do you need? Like, that you're going to allow this to happen? Don't you just want to have now the legacy of being a good president? I mean, this is.
Yeah, I was saying to you about like the cryptocurrency thing. I think there's incredible promise.
Then he goes into crypto. Like, this was just unbelievable. And look, it just. I think that Hunter Biden has an agenda here. From what I understand, I think her team reached out to him, but I think he has an agenda. I think Hunter Biden is going to try to run for some type of political office or something. It's crazy as hell, but we've seen crazier. And I was actually very shocked that Candace did not push back on things that were very easy to push back on. And so I don't know what to say here, but I will just say it's really interesting that Hunter Biden wants forgiveness and redemption. Fine, it is what it is. But I just feel like the average person they never get it. The average person doesn't get a redo. The average person doesn't get that, that time to atone for what they've done. I feel like it just does not work out that way. But I feel like because he's Joe Biden's son, that's why he's even given the opportunity to have it. I don't know, man. I'll just say this. I don't know what he's, like I said, you won't believe it. Like, I couldn't even believe this interview was happening, to be honest with you. But to have Hunter Biden sitting there and to not get into Burisma, to not, even if, say you ask the question and the response is, I can't really talk about that because of legal reasons. Okay, fine. But I mean, it's like, there were a number of lies. And that I think are easy to debunk. And we've watched Candace do a number of debates. And I'm just really surprised that she did not push back here. That just seems kind of weird. But I would not fall for whatever this is that Hunter Biden is trying to do. I really do think he might be trying to run for some type of political office. And I think that's why he's making the rounds with these interviews. And if that's the case, the first step is to get people to forgive him and to have sympathy for him, to try to like clean, his image as much as possible. And then he can hit the rounds and run for whatever it is that he wants to run for. But I'm not falling for it. I'm telling you guys right now, there's some weird things. I watched the whole thing. It's a long ass interview. There were some weird things, some weird behavioral things from Hunter Biden as well. And just by like watching that, like, to me, it's just like, I felt like I was being gaslit. I really did. But you let me know what you think. All right, ladies and gents, that is it for me. We are going into Memorial Day weekend. I will not be live this Sunday because of the holiday weekend, but I will have videos that are uploaded throughout this time. There's a couple of interviews that I have done as well. And just a quick reminder, save the date if you want to attend the virtual mutual aid workshop. It'll be May 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah. All right. Eric's going to come in. He's going to close out the show and read the rest of the super chats. And it is what it is.
We got some also here on the regular chats. We got Skylar coming in saying it's access journalism at its finest. And the Oracle saying it seems like there was some kind of mutual quid pro quo agreement between Candace and Hunter. which I think is a good theory.
Mm,
You know,
that's a
I
good
think
point.
yeah, it was like mutually, beneficial for both of them. And
Mm.
she gets a big get, and it helps her clicks, and like you're saying, he gets to try and clean up his image and get that story out there. We have Measured
Mm.
Man saying that's why the interview was so weird, and he told lies that have been proven.
Mhm.
But I guess he could get away with it. But there you go. Oh, the other thing I
Wow,
noticed was
man.
that, like the way he speaks, like he sounds like he has like his father's dementia already, and I think all that hard living's kind of done his brain in a bit.
Drugs will do that to you, Eric.
Mm,
It's
but there
true.
you go.
Yeah. Especially like, yeah, drugs will do that to you. Um, but that's it
Yeah.
for me, guys.
Hmm.
All right. Have a good
All right.
night.
All
Keep up the
right. We're
fight.
gonna let Sabby duck out here. I got a couple more things to say. The other, oh yeah, the other thing was like he's talking about how at least Biden didn't decide he's going to have the Trump golf course and whatnot. I mean, under Biden, Gaza basically turned from a vibrant, functional area into basically a moonscape. When you can look at it like on Google Earth and other photographs before and after, and a lot of that happened under Biden. I mean, a large, I don't know if you call it a majority. I mean, it was really, a lot of it was cleared up. And yeah, Trump let it go further and finish out the job. And that's always the game that they play, right? Is, oh, we may be bad and corrupt, but look at how bad the other guy is, how bad the Trump is. And it gets into the ratchet effect. And like, I would say like, saying Trump is worse isn't the flex that the Bidens think it is. But yeah, interesting stuff. I think it gets into how our whole political system works and the problems that we have. And it's this game that they play where you have the terrible big bad Republicans to scare people into voting for the Democrats who act like they're better, but effectively the same things happen, and they're just a little more polite about it. It's it's up to us to figure out to clue in and know what their game is, right? What they're doing there, and to that extent, that's also a big part of what we do with 11 Demands. It's about knowing what's happening with the game and just understanding that both of these parties are working for the billionaire class, are working for those interests, right? That's a big part of it. It's about interests, the interests of the billionaires versus the interests of us, the 99%. Another, so we have interesting figures in this. We have AOC. I think most people have kind of clued into AOC's game by now. But you have figures like Memdami on the left, and you have Massey kind of nominally on the right. And it becomes this question of, do we support them? How do we respond to them? I mean, I tend to think our first and foremost response should be, what you're doing is great. When are you going to leave the corrupt uniparty? And when are you going to come to us and meet, our demands of not being corrupt players in a corrupt system? I think that needs to be the core way we look at it and deal with it. And as a part of that, there is the latest 11 Demands Substack article, which just dropped. And we can look at how you get to that. So if you go to the old 11demands.org, and under there's lots of good stuff on there, but part of it is the Substack. And if you click through into there, the first part here is a series of kind of core highlighted posts, and you can click through to the full set on Substack itself. And the latest one is called an MCDS analysis of Massey's loss. And we start out here with a picture of Tom Massey during his concession after that race, where tons of money was poured into it to boost his opponent. I believe it was the most money spent ever in a congressional representative race. So let's take a look here. Representative Thomas Massey's loss in the Republican Party primary occurred after a huge influx of Israeli Zionist cash into the race. That much is clear, but it's not the complete picture. As is always the case, an MCDS analysis brings us greater understanding. So we're talking about MCDS, which is Money, Corruption, Demands, Solutions. It's a framework of how to look at things. And if you get nothing else from what 11 Demands is doing, and you come away with MCDS, I think you'll still come away with a better understanding. So the M, the money. The historic sums of money dumped in were, in large degree, in support of Israel. But the source of that money, it was the billionaire class. This is a very important distinction. Yes, Israel exerts so much influence, but it's because Israel is a billionaire pet project. And that is actually a click-through. And there's another article on the 11 Demands Substack about that, the billionaire pet project. And here we have our Miriam Adelson. And this article gets into how that operates. But back to the article at hand here. That's the M, the money. We get into the C. The influence of the billionaire class must be called out for what it is, corruption. And it extends beyond the Zionist project. It runs deep in both major parties, the megacorporations, and the media. We get to the D. Having clear demands is crucial, and they need to be more than just one congressional race and one special interest. It's not enough to just call out the AIPAC lobbies. What we need are systemic fixes. We must demand an end to the big money corruption, to all of it. When the demands are clear, the S part, the solutions become clear. And if you look at the number one on the 11 demands list, is about how you clean up that corruption. And Sabrina had a section on that earlier in the show tonight, talking about public financing. And there's a whole list of things that can be done to clean that up. We need to not just call out the corruption and say that our elections are rigged or bad or corrupt. We need to be demanding that fixes to them, that they get better. That means things like public financing. That means a big one is to amend the Constitution with a move to amend style Constitution that says money is not speech, corporations are not people. That kind of amendment is super important. There was that Hawaii bill that came up that is attempting to overturn Citizens United, and a lot of legal scholars say, and I would tend to agree with them, that where that bill is going to end up is at the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court will strike it down because they'll say money is not speech, it's unconstitutional, and zoop. The real fix is a constitutional amendment that says money is not speech. And that should be a big thing that we're pushing for. So the point is that there are solutions. There are ways that these things can get fixed. A big part of what the corporate establishment does is to try to make us think that it's hopeless, that these solutions don't exist. It's up to us, all of us, to imagine a better world and demand that world and demand these real changes. That's what 11 Demands and MCDS are all about. If Representative Massey had exited the Republican Party, if he had run as an independent, and he called out the leadership of both parties as irredeemable servants of the billionaires, he would have garnered a groundswell of grassroots working class support. By remaining in the party, he limited that support, and the party crushed him, just like the Democratic Party did with Bernie Sanders during those primaries. For Thomas Massey, the choice is clear. He can continue on as just another player in the corrupt game, or he can break free of the uniparty and get clear about where the real fight is. It's the top 0.1% versus the 99%. us. It's up to him and it's up to all of us to be clear about our demands and about where the real fight is. It's the billionaires versus the rest of us. And for more about that, of course, you can see 11demands.org. I would ask and encourage everyone to sign up to the 11 Demands Substack. And it's all you need is an email, and you get notified when new articles like this drop. And whether you subscribe or not, there's lots on there that you can check out. It gets into what the project is about. It's about a way of thinking, and it's about a new kind of politics that not only calls out the problems and identifies them, but brings it to clear demands about what we do about it. If our politics are based on demands and not on personalities, then I think we can really get somewhere, and we can be saying to these politicians, this is where we are. Are you going to come to us? All right, that is our 11 demands for tonight, and you can, as always, check that out at, there it is, 11 demands. Got a few super chats here to clear up. To read out from the queue, and then we'll call it a night for a little while here. Let's see. Thanks for the super chat. Measured Man, who says, remember the world is a stage. That is the message. I hear you. And thanks for the super chat. Servant of the Most High, who says, foundational Black Americans need reparations. Half of us are Native Americans. The other half is Black Europeans. My family been here since 1632 from out of England and have the records. All right. And then I need to bring up one here on the Rumble. We had a few build up here on the Rumble, and we want to make sure we don't forget about those peeps as well. Here we are. And we got Angry Pro coming in hot here saying, and thanks for the Rumble rant, saying Mandami is not on the left. He's a sheepdog, an opportunist, and controlled opposition. The same goes for Jeremy Corbyn in the UK. Yeah, I mean, I hear where you're coming from, and I'm certainly cautious about Mandami. I would say if our politics are based on clear demands and with that strong focus on corruption, then, like I said, it becomes more of a situation where we're a mass of people and we're saying they need to come to us and meet our demands and do our kind of politics, not corruption. And, being a part of a corrupt party is, not the best sign. So there you go. All right, thanks for this Rumble rant from Ardeen W. Who says, Hunter Biden's digital footprint was not stolen. He sold it for more drugs. I hear you, yeah. I think Hunter Biden, as much as anything, is just bored, looking for something to do. And Ardeen W. also saying, why would Candace softball Hunter Biden? That is, well, I mean, we mentioned that. I think it gets into that thing where it's beneficial for both of them to do the interview. And, who knows what kind of agreements were put together or whatnot. It would be an interesting question for Candace, and as to why the questions were so soft. But those are questions for her to answer, I guess I'd say. With that, we're going to call it a night here. As always, you can see Sabby live on usually the regular schedule. Like she said, we're going to take a break on this Sunday. So the next time Sabby will be back at you will be on Tuesday next week at 7 p.m. I thought we had a good show tonight. A great interview with Max Blumenthal. It was great to get him back on. And of course, I always encourage everybody to keep up with Max and what the Gray Zone is doing. And I hopefully we'll get Wyatt Reed on here as well soon. He was recently in Iran. And, there's always more to talk about. Great interview there. And you can see, Sabrina also mentioned we'll have recorded interviews and other clips over the weekend. So keep an eye out for those. And until then, we see you next time on Tuesday. And as we always like to say around here, have a good night. Keep up the fight. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Peace.